right, there's one.
All right. I'm back.
All right, we'll get Peter in.
Here's Johnny.
There we go. And Stacy.
On the Iron Throne.
Hello.
And the gang's all here. All right.
I freaking love my my avatar. So.
Yeah, the chair you're in now is slightly less impressive, but
It is slightly less impressive. I mean, it's got a nice supportive mesh back.
oh,
A
nice.
little bit more comfortable
It's a
than
little more comfortable. Not much lumbar support on the Iron Throne.
No.
And less chance of cutting a finger off.
It's true.
Or having your head cut off. Ooh, spoiler alert. All right. Here we go. Let me get something rolling here. Peter, you want to just talk for a second so I could check your level?
Checking the level is important because otherwise it'll sound real loud. But I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to be speaking regularly and maybe get a little bit louder so you know where the peak is and the lows is.
That's perfect. Thank you. Phil?
Okay, I'm going to just blabber on and on and on because that's what I do when I don't know what to say, which is mostly all the time.
Perfect. Stacy?
And I'm just going to talk about things and stuff and be loud sometimes because I don't actually know what I'm talking about most of the time, but I'm good at like filling space and saying words and stuff, so that's good.
That's always important. Okay. Go ahead and stop that, kill that, hit record, and here we go.
This show is produced in conjunction with Blazing Caribou Studios. You can check out this and other cool podcasts in the Blazing Caribou family by heading over to blazingcariboustudios.com. If you like the show, consider becoming a Patreon and donating because BCS is funded solely by listeners like you. Special thanks to Alpha Geek Media and Diamond Club for their continued support. And as always, thank you for listening.
In another sea, I don't want this anyway.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 5 of I'd App That. Each week on the show, we will discuss a few app-related news stories and review apps available on iOS and or Android devices. I'm Sean Burns. I'm filling in for Shane Maddox, who's on assignment, and joining me today are my co-host, Peter Fisher. Hello, Peter.
Hello, Peter. No, I mean, hello, Sean.
How's it going?
Good.
Good. And the newest co-host to I'd App That, a warm welcome to Miss Stacy Baldwin. Hi, Stacy.
Hello. How's everybody doing?
Good. How are you tonight?
Good. Enjoying the hot, muggy weather here in New Jersey.
Oh, lovely. Well, you're just one state away from me. I'm in Pennsylvania, and it's hot enough to melt here right now, so I get it.
Yeah.
And joining us in this episode is our guest cartoonist and illustrator, Phil Rood. Hi, Phil. How are you tonight?
I'm good, Sean, and I don't want to hear about anybody being too hot and muggy because I am in Florida where we are all dying. It's horrible.
You win.
Yeah. Florida always wins in the hot and muggy department.
Yeah, I wish that was the only department we won in.
Well, Phil, you're joining us here as a cartoonist and illustrator, but also as one of the hosts of an upcoming show here on Blazing Caribou Studios. Why don't you, in just a few sentences, tell folks what Sketching Comedy is all about?
Sketching Comedy is a show coming up with myself, Kerry Sims, and Fletcher Bumpus. It's an improv comedy show where Fletcher and Kerry are going to be playing improv games, and as they go, I'm going to be sketching my interpretation of what they're doing and just kind of seeing where we all land at the end of it all. It's coming up here in the next few weeks. We should be starting to put some episodes down and get them rolling.
Awesome. Well, I know everybody's looking forward to it. It sounds like a really, really fun time and a very interesting concept to do improv comedy and art as part of a podcast. So it's going to be a lot of fun to see what you guys do with that.
It feels a little experimental, so I think we're all kind of waiting to see how it rolls out too. We're looking forward to it.
It's how all great things start, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
A little bit of high concept here at Blazing Caribou Studios. All right, well, let's go ahead. Thank you, Phil, for being here, and let's jump right in with the news.
And now, here is the news.
All right, the big news for the week is that Microsoft is reportedly working on a Slack competitor. This is coming to us from The Verge, and Microsoft is taking Slack head on and reportedly doing it under the Skype umbrella. Slack is a team chat program. We use it here at the network. We really like it. So it's interesting that Microsoft is going to try to develop a new Slack competitor. They're developing their new messaging software, and it closely mirrors Slack's functionality, and it's going to be done under that Skype umbrella, and it's being called Skype Teams. Leveraging Skype's core feature set, it's going to cater to the same large teams, and Microsoft has already released the Slack competitor in its overhauled SharePoint app, which launched this past spring. And, I've had my issues with Skype when it comes to podcasting, hence why we're over here on Fire Talk now. I don't know how I feel about Microsoft replacing Slack. Peter, you have any thoughts on this? Is this something you're looking forward to, or does this scare you as much as it scares me?
It's just basic Microsoft, the way they do things. Netscape Navigator, that's a nice thing. Oh, we got Internet Explorer. Oh, the iPods, right? We've got the Zoom. Never mind.
Yeah.
They're not exactly known for being innovators, so I doubt that there's going to be anything in their replacement that Slack doesn't either already do or has a better version of. Microsoft is very good at functionality as far as like their operating systems and their business outlets. But as far as like creating, I don't know what they could add to a Slack like app that would improve on what it already is. That would make me want to switch.
Except for the Skype part.
Yeah, there's the one-on-one calls that Slack has, and Slack does allow for team actual calls like Skype or like Hangouts in their paid version. So I think that's probably where Skype is going to kind of differentiate itself, is through that kind of conference calling. But do we do that, though, when we've already got Skype? I mean, they're basically saying we can better Slack by being what we already are.
Well, I can definitely tell you, so I work for Groupon, but I work from home. So for a work from home team, Slack is amazing. We do often we don't use Skype, we use Google Hangouts a lot. And Fuse, we use an app called Fuse a lot. So it's for video conferencing. If that was integrated, that actually, I mean, that is a feature that we would definitely use. Whether or not it's as clunky as Skype currently is would be the factor, because we don't use Skype, and we don't use Skype for a reason. So I don't know if they integrated it smooth enough into the actual app, it might be a little bit better. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, it definitely, I mean, it could have potential, but I know from my standpoint, I got to think that unless somebody comes to me and says, man, you have to check this out, it is so much better than Slack. I'm of the mindset of if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And right now, Slack is not broke. Slack is working 100% for what we needed to do here at the studio. So I don't really see much advantage. Phil, what's your experience with Skype? Is Skype a name you trust or distrust just from hearing it?
I feel like Skype was the thing everybody used when they were the only video chat in town. And now that there are Google Hangouts, now that we used Blab for a hot minute while they were up.
Yeah.
There's Fire Talk. There's a million other ways. There's FaceTime on your iPhone. There's a million ways to video chat with somebody that you don't need Skype. And I kind of wonder about Skype, a Skype integrated messaging service. Is that going to drop your text half the time and just kind of get all robot-y in text form somehow? I kind of feel like this is almost like a marketing thing. Like Microsoft may appeal to a different kind of market. Like there's a lot of people who don't use Slack because they haven't heard of Slack, and I only use Slack because of a couple groups that I am involved with, have brought me into Slack. My kids use Kik. There's these different messaging services that sort of appeal to different clicks. And I kind of wonder if Microsoft will just take this and this will be like the Facebook of messaging service. So this will be the one your parents are on, or that your grandparents get involved with. Yeah, it becomes more widespread with just a different demographic maybe.
Yeah.
But I don't see it replacing anything. I don't see the people who are using Slack, myself included, love it. And I don't see people just picking up and going, well, this is something new, so F Slack, we're going over here now. I just think it may just appeal to different people.
Yeah. Slack,
Just to clarify, SharePoint and Skype Teams are separate programs.
right. Yeah, Skype's going to be the new one. SharePoint was the one that they have already released that they thought might compete with Slack. It's interesting that they have here in the story that Slack currently has a $3.8 billion valuation. So I'm sure that they're, that shows the worth of Slack, as well as I've been seeing a lot of commercials on television for Slack lately, which you don't always see except with your really high-end apps. And I've even seen them running ads during NFL football, which is not a cheap ad buy. So they're definitely flushed with money and doing quite well over at Slack. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens, because that's the wonderful thing about this, is that it could turn on a dime and all of a sudden some new competitor swoops in and has all the more shinier bells and whistles, and all of a sudden everybody's using that. So but definitely for right now, I think Slack is the way to go, at least for us anyway. So all right, so let's go ahead and we'll hear an ad, and then we're going to talk to Phil about some cartooning and illustrating and art apps. So we'll be right back after this ad from the Jukebox.
Hi there, this is Brett Stewart from the Jukebox Podcast. Are you a huge fan of music, or perhaps you'd like to expand your sonic horizons? Well, I am here to help. Every month, the Jukebox digs deep into the finest of the world's independent music. From folk to blues to hip-hop, rock and roll, jazz, spoken word, experimental, even classical. We spend time with it all. Plus, I bring industry professionals and fellow fans on Jukebox roundtables every month to discuss the latest news and topics in the industry. Join me at jukeboxpodcast.com and on all major podcatchers.
All right, so Phil brought some apps for artists for us to look at, and the first one that he's going to talk about is Metabang Paint. What is Metabang Paint, Phil?
Metabang Paint is, I'm going to compare it to Photoshop. This is like an app version of Photoshop in that it has a pretty robust toolbox. It has a lot of buttons on it. It has quite a few options for like brushes and pens and layers. But that can also kind of be a drawback too. If you're not familiar with Photoshop, I can see someone getting into this app and just being really overwhelmed by almost, I don't know how much you guys use Photoshop, but like, when you first opened it up, and there's so much crap on there that you'll never ever touch and never ever use. But you don't know that. There's just too many options, and you're almost paralyzed by it. And if you do know Photoshop, coming into Metabang Paint, it's got all the bells and whistles on it, but they're in different places. So it takes you a little bit of stumbling around. It's not necessarily the best interface because it is putting a lot of toolbars and such on a small screen, on an iPad screen. So you got to kind of figure out how to open and close those. So there's a lot of that going on. But that said, it works pretty well. I use it mostly, and my disclaimer for all of these is that I still draw on paper. I don't do a lot of digital work, but I use these for like digital sketching, sketching ideas out, layouts, and I do a lot of coloring on them in the last year.
So would you prefer this for more of like photo editing or more of creating original artwork?
I would say this particular app is more for creating artwork. There are a couple others that are for photo editing. Leonardo is one, and Filter Storm New is another. They're both pay apps, but they're good photo editing apps. Metabang Paint is more of a sketch pad. My comparison to Photoshop is just in that it has a lot of functionality. It has a lot of features to it.
And I think it's a little bit more aimed towards like cartoonists, because you can set up like having the different panels on the thing, so you can have like Spider-Man here and then Gwen Stacy, and
I think a lot of that is coming out of Manga Studios' success in the last few years, because that is basically Photoshop that is aimed specifically at comic creators. It's got panel layouts. It's got all the tools that you would use to make a comic page is built into that. And I think Metabang is trying to do the same thing in app form. And they're doing a good job. I just think this is a little bit clunky. I can see it getting streamlined and getting a little better interface in the future, and being something I've seen people on all of these apps. I've seen people do way better digital work than I do. So there are people who I've seen really take to it and can really crank out some really good artwork. But for me, it's a little bit clunky. It's good for coloring, but I haven't used it much past that. And you can get some high resolution output on that. Not some other apps have some trouble with that, getting a print resolution that you can really work with after that.
Do you see this replacing Photoshop for some artists? Or?
Maybe for some artists. I think we're kind of in that time right now where apps are getting better, tablets are getting more powerful. I think there are a lot of people who are starting to realize they don't need the Creative Cloud. They don't need that subscription to get done what they need to get done. If you're working in a studio, if you're working freelance for people and they're working with Photoshop, it's still an industry standard. You're still going to need it for certain work. But if you're strictly creating on your own, yeah, you can use any of this stuff. I've used for coloring in the last 6 months. I don't think I've used Photoshop near as much as I've used this, and another one I'm going to talk about today is Procreate. I've used those for coloring more in the last 6 or 8 months than anything else, just because it's easy, it's cheap, and I can take it with me. So
it's free versus $50 a month.
This one is free. Some of the other ones cost a couple bucks, but
yeah,
compared to, I don't know what's a Photoshop subscription, like $50 a month.
No,
$9, or
if
like,
you get
yeah,
the photographer's bundle.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Now, with Metabang, if there's one feature that you wish they had in there that they don't currently, what would you say that is? What's the one piece that seems to be missing?
I feel like some of their brush library is a little thin. I think they have some good painting brushes, but for me, I want to do line work, and I want something that mimics a couple different actual ink brushes better and give me a little bit different line than I've been able to find in there. So yeah, I would say that some of that is lacking a little bit. But I think, like I said, I think it's only a matter of time before this gets built up a little bit more, or other third parties start developing other, like there are artists who make Photoshop brushes, and I think it could get to a point where people could do add-ons that could possibly work within new apps like this. Go ahead, Peter.
I tried this on my iPhone, and the menus seemed kind of jumbled, like sort of like they just threw everything into a drawer type of thing. Is it much more logically laid out on the iPad version of it?
It's hard to say because I'm still in my head. I'm still comparing it to Photoshop, and anytime you're used to like the Photoshop layout, and you go into something that's not that, it tends to throw me off.
Kind of similar, so you can make direct comparisons.
Right.
When I was trying to learn how to use GIMP, it was completely foreign to me because it looked very similar, but everything did a different function, and it was infuriating.
That's a great comparison, Stacy. GIMP and what's the other? Inkscape is the vector equivalent, which I use for vector work a lot. I don't have Illustrator anymore. I use Inkscape, but I was so familiar with Illustrator that when I switched to Inkscape, it was just similar enough to really turn me around. And it took me I spent a weekend trying to figure out where everything was. And the same thing, the interface is not quite what you're used to.
And it's almost worse if it's kind of similar because you click on something thinking that it does something completely opposite of what it does, and then you just want to throw your computer out the window.
You just end up frustrated and mad. Yeah.
Yeah. Spacing just.
It's a very similar experience with this. It's almost I would almost call it a Photoshop knockoff. It's scaled down a little bit, but it's just similar enough to where you're like, I know this tool will do what I need it to do. I just have to find it, and finding it is the chore. So that I think is my big complaint with this. And once you figure out, for me, it's pretty simple because it's only a few tools that I'm going to use. And once you figure out where they are, it's fine. You can close everything up and work with the canvas. But when you have to switch them, you have to open everything back up, select your tool, close everything. And it just is, it's an interruption to the workflow.
It's tedious. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
We're getting ready to move on here in a second. Peter, did you have something you wanted to ask on this before we move on to the next one?
Well, not so much about this, but like GIMP has GIMP Shop, which has like a Photoshop-like interface to make GIMP more like Photoshop. Does the vector graphics program you have something like that with Illustrator?
I don't know. I've not known about GIMP Shop, but I will look into that now that I know that's a possibility, because that would make a huge difference.
Sure.
Stacey, have you used Inkscape?
I have not used Inkscape. I've only ever used GIMP, but I didn't know that GIMP Shop existed. That's a cool little tidbit. I had no idea, so I'm probably going to download.
I am writing that down, yes.
It's still GIMP. It's just like a over...
Is it an add-on?
It's an add-on, yeah.
Okay. Neat.
Thanks, Peter.
Well, if folks want to check out Metabang, they can look it up in their app store or go to metabangpaint.com sketchbook.com. Next up, we're going to talk about Sketchbook Express. And Phil, why don't you tell us a little bit about Sketchbook Express?
I think of these three, Sketchbook Express is probably the most intuitive. It's the most plug in and go of it. It's got a real simple toolbar. It's got a real simple tutorial it walks you through right at the beginning. So you can figure out their shortcuts of, how to open up and adjust the brushes with touching the screen and things like that. So it's a real simple use, and it's a scaled down version of Sketchbook Pro, which is a desktop app. And that's the one I am most likely going to be using in sketching comedy. It's a real simple drawing app. It's got a simple toolbar across the top. Everything is right there. You hit your pencil. You can select a pencil, a pen, a brush, your eraser. You can adjust the width, the opacity on all of them. You can adjust the color, and you can do it all really simply. It's Autodesk makes the software, and I think they do a great job of giving you simplicity and a lot of cool features. They have a symmetry button where you can click it, and this is on the app and as well as on the full version, and then draw on half of the screen and it mirrors it on the other half. So if you're wanting to draw like a house or something perfectly symmetrical, you only have to draw half of it. I've used it for laying out some sketches where I wanted different things, but I wanted them to mirror each other. So you can just do the forms and just do it once, and it'll line it up perfectly. And then you can lightbox a printout of it or something like that.
Rather than having to lasso tool it and select it, and reverse it, and all of that. It does
it all right there. It's really cool. It's really intuitive. It's really easy to use, and it's some of the drawing software I've used the most consistently since I got a tablet, probably 4 or 5 years ago. So out of Photoshop, Manga Studio, Coral Paint, stuff like that, Autodesk's Sketchbook series has been some of the most consistent digital sketching I've done. I just think they make great drawing software that's really easy to use.
Now, the description on Sketchbook's website mentions that it's designed for people of all skill levels who love to draw. Would this be something, like, I have no artistic ability whatsoever. Is this something I can sit down and play with and at least enjoy, trying to learn a few things, or is this, really at least a minimal artist level and above?
I think you can learn to draw on this just like you can learn to draw on paper. Mm-hmm. The big thing, I would say that going with the version on an iPad is it's more intuitive. My disconnect with drawing on a Wacom tablet on my computer is that I'm looking at my screen and my hand is down out of my, you know what I mean? It's a disconnect. This is what I really liked. I got an iPad just last year. And so this is something I kind of jumped into right away. I was looking for drawing apps. It lets you draw straight on the screen. So it's a lot easier for me. Some people don't have as big a problem with it. But if you wanted to give an app a shot for just learning how to do things and kick around, no matter what your skill level, it's a free app. I think it's super easy to use. And I would totally recommend giving that a shot.
Cool. All right. Anybody have anything else on Sketchbook before we move on to the last app for Phil?
Nope.
All right. So if you want to check out Sketchbook Express, again, you can go to your Play Store, your App Store, or go to www.sketchbook.com/mobile. And I would imagine at sketchbook.com you're going to be able to find the desktop apps as well. So
They have a couple different mobile apps, a couple different versions. There is a paid version of Sketchbook with more features, more tools. But yeah, I think this is a good place to start is Express.
cool. All right, the last one that you wanted to talk about was Procreate. So let us know, what is Procreate?
Procreate is something I heard about for the first time last year on Hammond Chamberlain's Beyond the Playlist. I was on the Artist Roundtable with an artist named Nick Gregory. He's amazing. Go find him. And he had done all of his work for the Roundtable in this app called Procreate. It's a $6 app, I believe, in the App Store. It's really surprisingly easy to use, and it gives you a really surprising array of brushes, textures. There's a lot of elbow room to do what you want to do in this. Nick had done paintings that look like paintings on canvas. I mean, they have all these different brushes, all these different textures, all this opacity. You have layers to work with, just like in Photoshop. The only drawback to layers is depending on the size of your canvas. The amount of layers you get to work with depends on the size of your canvas. If you have something big, you only get 2-3 layers.
Okay.
Something smaller, it gives you more room. But you can customize your canvas size. It's just really easy. There's only a few buttons at the top that let you lay out what you're doing. They're all pretty explanatory. There's one that moves it around. There's a little brush icon. There's an eraser icon. There's 2 squares over each other. That's the layers. And there's a circle with a color in it, and that's your color selector. On the side, you have 2, what do you even call them? You have 2 controls. They're just little sliders, and that's your brush size and your brush opacity. And it's that easy to use. It's all right there. You can export your final work as a Photoshop file, so you can throw it in your Dropbox and open it in Photoshop and do whatever finishes you want to it. You can export video. It takes video of all the drawing, everything that you're doing to it, and it will give you a time-lapse video when you're done, which I like to do because I love to see other artists process.
Right.
So I share, if I do just some coloring and I take an hour to color, it'll give me a 45-second video or whatever.
I love those videos.
It's really cool. And they just roll through it, and I'll just post it on Facebook or whatever, and like, this is what I worked on today. It's a really fun, really easy to use app that you can do a lot. You can get a lot of mileage out of it.
So
for
when you,
$6, it seems like a pretty good bargain.
It's for an artist, I think it's the best $6 you'll ever spend. You know what I mean? I've spent more on really nice fountain pens and brushes, but and it's just like, here's a $6 app that will, it's just, I think it's a really solid app, and I would encourage anybody who does any kind of digital drawing to drop the $6 and at least give it a shot. It's really worth playing around with.
or $8.50 in Canada.
Yeah, I don't know what Canadian money it's going to drag out of you, Peter.
So when you export to a PDF, do you get like the different level layers on it, like a color layer and a layer?
PSD, it maintains all your layers that you've worked with. It maintains their opacity. You get it back in Photoshop just like you exported it out of Procreate.
Okay.
So it's really nice for that because it does export at a lower resolution. So if you bring it in big enough, and then you work with it, you can export it to Photoshop and resample it, so you can get something that you can print. You know what I mean? You can resample it down to a higher res and work with it there. So it is nice that it let me.
So it's a pixel thing.
Yes,
and not a
yes, it's
vector
not.
thing.
All of these are pixel based. I don't think none of these are vector.
Vector based.
Vector based. Yeah, you can export this as a Procreate, Photoshop, a PDF, a JPEG, or a PNG. So it gives you quite a few options to export your artwork and your video, and there's selection tools. There's a lot going on in this app.
So you consider this like the top end of the 3 apps that we're talking about tonight?
Yeah. I would say this is probably, this and Sketchbook are both kind of right there, but I think for overall, I think this is this has the most bang for your buck, even though this is the pay app that I'm reviewing. I think it's worth what you pay just for the extra tools you get and for their ease of use. You know what I mean?
Okay.
It's not like Metabang where they have a bunch of tools, but like Peter said, it looks like someone threw a bunch of tools in the junk drawer and now there's just this mess. This is
Right.
organized. This is easy to use. It's a great interface, which, you know, I know a lot of artists who, I'm not going to name names or say that I'm one of them, are a little scatterbrained and get off track easy. So if you make them do a bunch of extra shit
I don't know what you're talking about at all.
of trying to draw something, you know, you're going to sidetrack everything. And this has it all, I think, right there.
So there's not as much of a learning curve, I guess, with this.
Yeah, this is pretty intuitive. You can kind of jump right in. You could spend a weekend playing with brushes, opacities of different brushes, and seeing what they all do. But if you just to jump right in and start drawing or start painting, you can do that too. And I mean, it's a lot like Sketchbook Express in that way. It's easy to jump in and just hit the ground running. Sean, same with what we were saying about, you know, if you're a beginner and you want to learn, you can do a lot worse than this. I think just having a price tag on it will, if you're not sure if you really want to do it, that'll keep people out of it. I think people who are a little more serious, a little more into it, it's already a hobby for them. You know, they'd be willing to drop the $6 on it, but it is, you know, whatever your skill level is, I think it's easy enough to jump in and just go, well, I'm going to draw a dog today, and just jump in and just start scribbling until you come out with a video of a dog on the other end. So yeah, it's pretty easy. It's pretty intuitive.
Nice.
All right, very cool. Well, folks can, again, check that out on their app store or at procreate.si. And all of these addresses will be in the show notes. Another really important address for folks to check out is patreon.com/Blazing Caribou Studios. That's where you can go and support Blazing Caribou Studios, support IDAP, support Sketching Comedy, support all the great shows we have here at Blazing Caribou. There are now rewards for the $1, $3, $5, and $10 levels, all of which get you bonus content from many of our different shows on the network. So again, if you want to support us, it is patreon.com/Blazing Caribou Studios. And we thank those who already support us and who will be supporting us in the future. All right, so now we're going to go on to Peter's pick. Peter's pick this week is an app called Hopper. Peter, why don't you tell us a little bit about Hopper?
Well, last week we had Skyscanner, which is like, I need to go to city A in the next 3 weeks. I want to find the cheapest flight. Now, Hopper, on the other hand, is, I'm going to Salt Lake City next June. I want to find the cheapest flight. You put in the dates, and it says, well, it'll cost you this much right now. But if you wait for a couple weeks, it's going to go down. Or it basically tells you when to buy. So you tell it where you want to go and when you want to go. And it keeps an eye on the price. And when it gets to a price that it thinks is the lowest it's ever going to be, they'll send you a message on your phone or send you an email saying it's time to buy. So it's basically a way to keep track of the price of airfare over a long time.
Which I find incredibly useful because I'm the type of person that I pretty much go to the same places every year. I'll go to South by Southwest. I'll go to Dragon Con, to Nerdtacular. And so I'm planning months in advance when I go to travel. If it's for somebody that travels for work, say, and they need, prices for next week, you're saying it's not going to be very useful because that's not really the point of the app.
It'll find you the cheapest prices, but it might be that you're going next Thursday and next Wednesday. Well, no, it'll be the same date. It's just there's less variations the closer to the flight. So if you're 6 months out, there's going to be a higher chance that the price is going to go down. But as you get closer to the departure time, the higher the price is going to be. Unless it's like a half-filled plane, and then they'll drop the thing because going with empty seats, they're not making any money. So, but it's basically a way to keep track of a certain date, a certain time, to find you the cheapest thing.
Do they do anything with price guarantees where since it's predictive, if they tell me, okay, right now your flight is $300 and it's the cheapest it's going to be, and then 2 weeks later it's $275, do they do anything with that, or it's just you have to trust that it's doing the best job it can?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
Like things like Orbitz will do that. Oh, they claim to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
I know with high travel, so like South by Southwest, for example, ticket prices will skyrocket to double, sometimes triple what you would normally pay because there are so many people traveling to the same area at the same exact times. And so an app like this would probably be very useful for something like that specifically, just because you can get in on when prices are cheap, like way ahead of time. So I definitely see the advantage of using this, absolutely, and I'm probably going to download it.
Yeah, especially with Peter alluding to Salt Lake City next June being the Nerdtacular event that Frog Pants Studios puts on, that I know a lot of folks who listen to our shows are really looking forward to.
They have no data. They have no.
What's that?
They have no data for that. I've already checked.
Oh, okay. So we're not
It's
ready.
too far out. Yeah.
Too far out. So probably in like December or January, we'd be closer to that 6 month range, and we'll start to be able to see a lot more. So, is this something you've actually been able to use yet, Peter, or this is just something you checked out and thought, well, this is definitely going to pay dividends in the future?
I heard it on some show, or it could have been like through Johnny Jett, who's a travel guy that's on Leo Laporte's radio show a lot. But I actually did plan a trip out west in October, and I had this for a while, but I ended up, again, like with Skyscanner last week, Southwest does not have listings in this, so it's only prices of things that are searchable. So
Gotcha.
Like airlines that keep the price to themselves won't show up. So yeah.
All right. Well, very cool. Definitely something to check out. And again, folks can get that on their Play Store or at hopper.com. All right, and that is going to do it for us for another episode of I'd App That. Phil, thank you so much for joining us tonight and bringing those very cool apps. Where can people find you on the web?
Real simple. I'm at philrood.com, PHILROOD, and you can get to wherever else I am on the internet from there.
Awesome. And Peter, what about you? Where can folks find you?
You can find me at Tina Podcast. That's Tina_podcast, or Peter D. Fisher on Facebook.
Awesome. And Stacy, welcome aboard again. And where can folks find you?
I'm on the tweeters, and you can find me at StacyB23, so that's at StacyBeE23, or you can go to my website that I update periodically with whatever I'm doing, and that's going to be StacyBaldwin.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. Folks, our theme music is provided by Blanket Barricade, and you can find more of their work over at youtube.com/Blanket Barricade. Our writer for the show is David Luzader, and artwork for the show provided by Michael Johnson. If you enjoy this show, please consider subscribing on iTunes, leaving us a review, or telling a friend about I'd App That. Also, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/Blazing Caribou Studios. You can follow us on Twitter at I'd App That Show, and on Facebook at facebook.com/I'd App That. If you have any comments or feedback or apps you want us to check out, email us at I'dAppThatShow@gmail.com. I'm Sean, and you can follow me on Twitter at SBurnsPA. And until our next episode, keep on apping and let us know, would you app that?
You've been listening to a Blazing Caribou Studios production. If you like this podcast and want to hear more like this, consider supporting the BCS Patreon at blazingcariboustudios.com. A special thanks to Pinto and the Bean for our company theme music. If you want to hear more, head on over to pintoandthebeanmusic.com, where you can check out this and other cool tracks.
From a shallow world, oh yeah, state of a ship in another sea.
I forgot to tell you that on the closing, the stuff on black is usually what I read.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
Stole his thunder.
I know. I just get in a zone. It's like, what's his face from the X-Men? I just kind of put my head, Juggernaut, I just put my head down and start.
The juggernaut of podcasting.
Exactly. Sure. Why not? So, Stacy, where in Jersey are you from?
South Jersey, like 20 minutes from Philly.
Oh, okay. I grew up in Philly. So,
Oh, okay.
yeah. So
Yeah,
I lived
awesome.
there for quite a while
Yeah.
and still have a lot of
I don't
fun.
know. I mean, well, we're on the internet. I would get more specific, but we're on the internet. But yeah, I'm like 20 minutes from the bridge.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got a lot of family that's over in that area, Cinnamons and Cherry Hill and all Palmyra and all
Yep.
that whole swath of central South Jersey there. So
Yep.
very cool. All right.
Yeah.
Well, guys, that was a great show.
That was fun.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Now,
All right.
next week, we're going to work on getting a replacement because our guest for next week is now a co-host on the show. So
Ha.
we have to replace her for next week. So I'm going to work on that. But otherwise, I think we're good. So
Should I work on picking an app or for next week?
not yet, because we're basically what we're going to do is we're going to give you guys a couple weeks once Shane gets back to kind of just go with this format and just kind of get a chance to get to know each other, mesh a little bit, and then we'll figure out if we need to do another app or there might actually be another possibility. We want to integrate more interviews with like app developers and stuff like that. So we may have you like handle that part of it and Peter
Okay.
his app and then Shane handle the news. So we'll, give it 2 or 3 weeks to just kind of get into the flow of things, and then we'll kind of decide where best to point the ship and go.
And
Sure.
seeing as we're on Fire Talk, we might be able to get listeners to come on and
And do live.
say, well, I like this app. So, well, that type of thing.
Yeah.
Especially
Or
Having a
someone-
live audience is always fun.
Yeah, especially like during after show, because you could always let the guest go, and then the three of you can sit and talk to people from the audience who might want to pop in and things like that. So,
Sure.
Because right now they're limited to 4, so you wouldn't be able to pop anybody in right now, other than just in the chat room. They could like mention apps and stuff like that, but certainly to get them on the air if we could. So, all right. Well, I am going to wrap this up, and then Peter, I'll see you back here in about a half an hour for the occasional show. And
All right.
we go to re-record our fall movie preview.
I just had to re-record BMR, so.
It's a night. I hate re-recording shows. I feel like I sound so fake when I'm like, saying
Yeah.
a great revelation the first time, and now it's just, everybody's like,
Yeah. Alrighty. Well, I will see you guys next week, same time, same place, right?
Yep.
Yep. And you'll get all the information from Shane next week because he's going to be in. Peter, you're here next week or you're gone?
I'm here.
You're here. Okay.
I'm here till October.
Okay, and that's the one
Friday in October.
You and Shane. Shane's out 1 week. You're out the other.
Yep.
Perfect. Okay. All right. So we'll figure that out. Like I said, we'll get Carrie or myself to fill in those shows, and we'll be good to go.
All right.
Cool.
All right. Thanks, guys. Have a wonderful night.
See you.
See ya.
Everybody.
Later.
Bye.